Radical innovation involves as much marketing genius as it does technological genius. And given that my background is in communications, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, she would say that, wouldn't she? When I was asked to speak about this notion of how does innovation impact on a corporate brand, it took me back to the 1990s, at a time when I first moved to the United States from Europe. And at that time, my client was Xerox Corporation. I was working for them across mainland Europe. And it was at a time when they were really struggling from a brand perspective. It was the time when they were fighting off the competition from the Japanese. They were also facing some investigation around SEC deregulation issues. And they were really struggling with how they were going to invent the future of Xerox. So my opportunity at that stage was to review PARC, to look at PARC and see how PARC could be used as a potential to take some of the innovation and some of the halo effect that was going on in PARC to impact the corporate brand, and so that they could leverage that innovation. But if you remember PARC at that stage, you were either in the innovation or technology industry, or you had heard the story about Apple and about Steve Jobs' visit to PARC, where he was encountered all of the phenomenal innovation, which was the beginning of Apple computing. So I remember vividly that first drive down to the Palo Alto Research Center. It was a very sunny morning, and I found the research center at the foot of Sand Hill Road on this very bright day. My first interaction was with John Seely Brown, the chief scientist of Xerox PARC. And I would say that our meeting on that occasion probably surprised both of us. From my perspective, John Seely Brown was this brilliant scientist with an amazing media profile, but also somebody who was clearly struggling with the notion of how best to deal with the fact that every story and every media interaction he had asked him, why did Xerox not commercialize its innovation? For John Seely Brown, I was this Irish woman, and I was sent by the corporation to help him to communicate. So the irony of the whole situation didn't escape him. We clearly hit it off on that occasion. But in the weeks that followed, what I spent my time doing was really deeply understanding what was going on at PARC. It was one of the most fascinating experiences I've ever had. In those days, what PARC did was bring a collection of individuals together to coalesce around major, deep problems. And the kind of people that they brought together were, yes, scientists, anthropologists, technologists, but also musicians, children, parents, and the odd Irish communications woman. And our job was really to tackle complex problems, but as a group of people who really looked at those problems from a very different perspective and through a very different lens, and thus begin to create solutions around it. But one of the things that was amazing was that they often felt that these gatherings of different kinds of people was impromptu. You know, for example, when people met over a cup of coffee. As soon as the coffee was brewed, people would get up, go grab that cup of coffee. So given that Xerox PARC had innovated the graphical user interface, they decided to create an icon of a cup of coffee with steaming hot steam coming out of the coffee cup. And every time one of the coffee stations brewed a fresh cup of coffee at PARC, this icon appeared on people's computer, thus encouraging them to get up, grab a cup of coffee, and have some of these impromptu gatherings and discussions around whatever was the big topic du jour. So what I discovered at PARC was that it was not just a place that the GUI, the mouse, was first created, or where the Ethernet was innovated, or where Bob Metcalfe of Metcalfe's Law, or Eric Schmidt, better known today for his involvement with Google, had their start. But it was clearly a center for excellence of innovation. And then as I dug deeper into the media coverage, the thing that struck me most about how the story of PARC was being told was that the context for every story was that Xerox had fumbled the future. And as a result of this, Xerox was distancing itself from all of the innovation, and concurrently, Xerox PARC was distancing itself from Xerox in order because they didn't feel that the executives truly understood the innovation. So I felt this really needed to change. Now, at this stage, thankfully, my relationship with John Seeley Brown had gone from strength to strength. And he saw the power behind the notion of telling the Xerox and the PARC story together. And he was truly engaged and excited in the notion of it. But we needed to create new context. The new context was the story of PARC, which was infusing the corporation's strategy, but also that the corporation was infusing what was happening in PARC. So we created a narrative, and this narrative was around the concept of bringing Birkenstocks to Brooks Brothers. Birkenstocks was equal to innovation and Silicon Valley. Brooks Brothers, the commercial and the corporate environment, as was kind of referenced this morning, the bottom line. Now it got really exciting. So what we did was we made the top secret nature of Xerox PARC our biggest asset. We only invited journalists who are the most influential, a very small handful, to come visit PARC. And not every journalist had access, and so as a result of that, it became one of those places and one of those opportunities that people most wanted to get to. We turned to people to tell stories. So we paired executives with scientists for every media opportunity. And more often than not, whenever the CEO of Xerox spoke, he was accompanied by John as the chief scientist. So we always saw the CEO and the chief executive together, the scientist together. And we offered exclusives on major breakthroughs. I remember one in particular was this innovation around a sustained blue laser diode. And on that occasion, we had the scientists tell the story of how it was a major breakthrough. We had the executives tell the story about what the commercial value of this would be, and also, most importantly, how America had beaten Japan in actually this particular innovation. We launched a number of new spin-outs from Xerox PARC, those technologies that would not be relevant to Xerox Corporation, and we developed communications campaigns around those. We also told the innovation of Xerox, of PARC in Xerox's own products itself, the laser printing, for example. So from my perspective, the Brooks Brothers to Birkenstocks was really taking hold. And as a result of that, we saw a huge shift in the media coverage. We saw instead of every article opening with fumbling the future, it got buried in the story further and further because we created new context and new stories to be told. And in fact, some of the coverage over time began to not cover the fumbling of the future at all, and they exclusively wrote about the innovation coming out of PARC. So over this 3-year program, PARC did exactly what it was supposed to do. It drove innovation and added value to the corporation, and it brought significant brand reputation to the corporation at that time. So from my perspective, when I look back on that, and given that this is a light bulb moment, I wanted to draw some conclusions to the experience because those conclusions have really influenced the body of work that I've been doing since then. One was that innovation absolutely needs to be aligned with corporate strategy if it is to have impact on a brand. Number 2, corporate strategy needs to influence innovation if it's to truly commercialize the value of that innovation. 3, products can be invented, but innovation really only occurs when different people coalesce around an idea, come up with an insight, and bring that to the forefront. And 4, all innovation, when effectively communicated, can impact brand value. So let me bridge there from that experience and talk a little bit about some of the clients we work with today, because I do feel that today, obviously, innovation is the byword, and there are very, very few corporations that we work with who do not want to associate with innovation. So the challenge is somewhat different. However, the times that I've seen it to be most successful are those times when actually many of the themes of what I learned at Xerox PARC come to the forefront. Let me talk about British Airways first. So British Airways came to us at a time when they had just launched a route from San Francisco to London, from Silicon Valley into London. And they really needed to gain far greater awareness and far greater traction around that route. Clearly, the notion of a route itself is not innovation, but what British Airways knew was that the customers that they were seeking to have travel this route really cared deeply about innovation. So what we did was we brought very different people from across British Airways together, and we worked with them across multiple agencies, actually. It was not just Text 100, but we had ad agencies and marketing agencies work with us to really brainstorm this notion of how we would create greater awareness. And the key insights that came out of that is, yes, Palo Alto, Silicon Valley, San Francisco care deeply about innovation, but also a common theme was that they care deeply about education and STEM education specifically. And the other key thing about Silicon Valley is they do really like to network. So we created a campaign called Ungrounded, and it was the first innovation lab in the sky. We invited 135 people. They were futurists, they were technologists, they were people in education, to really to take a flight from Silicon Valley to London. So they spent 12 hours in the air focusing on the notion of how they could make progress on STEM education and make significant breakthroughs. So their ambition was really to coalesce around the toughest challenges, build solutions and drive outcomes, to make meaningful progress on the mission to promote STEM education. The results were incredibly impressive. We had 225 million media and social media hits. But most importantly, the commercial value was there also, in that after the event, we drove about 25% increase in the level of bookings on the British Airways flight to London. And all of this, I think, linked back to the fact that British Airways, in that key market for them, was associated with innovation. Another example I wanted to highlight was Lenovo, and I know Lenovo is up for an award tonight, so I hope this bodes well for their success in that. But from my perspective, Lenovo is probably one of the most innovative companies in the world, and extending back to its origins in a garage in Beijing. But it also has taken a very innovative approach to its business overall. And starting with the fact that it acquired IBM's PC division, which was a very incredible, bold move. But one of the things that was very interesting was that from the outset, they looked at bringing very diverse people together, even at the most senior levels in the leadership team. In fact, when Lenovo first bought the IBM PC business, they appointed an American CEO and subordinated their Chinese heritage in order to create a leadership team that was truly, truly global and from diverse backgrounds. And today, the leadership team, the executives within Lenovo are Australian, Italian, French, American, Chinese. And I think that influences everything, this notion of diversity and looking at challenges through different lenses. From heavy investment in R&D and constantly challenging the status quo in terms of their approach to marketing and communications. In fact, they place their heaviest weight on communications as opposed to advertising in order to drive their innovation messages forward. And so, for example, if you look at their product development, specifically the yoga tablet, their innovation team really challenged this notion of the fact that, yes, tablets are the future, but what about occasions when people want to use both a tablet and a laptop, which was really the genesis behind the creation of a whole new format dubbed the convertible and then branded yoga. And I think this is the kind of innovation from a company like Lenovo that has made it rise over the last 5 years to become the #1 PC manufacturer in the world. My last example is just to touch on IBM, because I thought that was an incredibly interesting story about the challenge that IBM faced once Lenovo did buy the PC division from them. So this is a company that was long admired, over 100 years old, for its innovation and its reinvention. But now, having sold the PC division, one of its biggest challenges was that it no longer had a single product that a consumer would ever buy. So how, therefore, would IBM, an iconic global brand, remain innovative in the hearts and minds of the general public, whose brand perception is clearly important because they are key influencers in terms of those who actually buy their products? The insight, I thought, was brilliant. Again, IBM looked across many divisions in order to come up with the insight and the inspiration. And the insight was that IBM's innovation may not be present in day-to-day purchases that consumer makes. However, its technology and its innovation are in the things that consumers clearly care about, whether that's democratization of healthcare, whether it's traffic flow, weather forecasting, environmental issues, and so on. So that's where the genesis of Smarter Planet came from, this notion that even though you may never buy as an IBM product, you do care deeply about their innovation and their technology and how that is relevant to creating a smarter world. So for me, the themes come through again and again. And while I've cited many big companies, we do also work with very small ones. And I think you see the agility around innovation in many of those as well. Innovation, from my perspective, has to be part of the DNA of a corporation and within its R&D. And the R&D and the corporation, the strategy, really need to be tightly coupled. Teams of people from very diverse backgrounds need to come and solve these problems. And then you have to use marketing genius to get the word out. So back to my quote, radical innovation involves marketing genius as much as technical genius. In fact, is not my quote. It was a quote from John Seely Brown. Thank you so much for having me. I also wanted to distribute a Starbucks coffee card to everybody. And my impetus in doing this is I would like you to go have a cup of coffee, share an idea, have a conversation, and generally come up with some insights. Thank you very much.